bunch, so I don't know how many that is. Maybe Will can say, oh, we've started. Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Thank You, Grant Imahara tribute panel here at Forcefest. Quick reminder that Forcefest is raising money for Make-A-Wish Foundation. You can donate via the link in the chat or the comments, or if you're on Get Vocal, there's that blue diamond at the top of your screen, and Get Vocal will match 33% of those donations. So I want to thank everyone for being here on Facebook and here on Get Vocal. A little bit, we're going to have my panelists introduce themselves, just a quick intro, and then their connection to Star Wars and also their connection to Grant. A little bit about me. I'm a science communicator, and it's my job and really my calling to make sure kids around the world know that they can be scientists and to get adults to trust science. I'm a lifelong Star Wars fan and love the Mythbusters, especially Grant's geeky enthusiasm. So I didn't know Grant. I have a couple selfies with him at Comic-Con or Woodstock events. With Star Wars Celebration canceled this year, Forcefest, this fan convention, rose up in its place. And I just knew that I wanted this panel to exist for people to come together and celebrate Grant's life and career. So I pitched the panel so that it would definitely happen, and I'm really honored to have these panelists here joining me today. So we'll start with Don.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being part of this. My connection with Star Wars and Lucasfilm, I started in 1987 doing character appearances with R2-D2, and then ultimately with all the characters. I became the second and fourth archivist. You'll find out who the third archivist is in a little bit. Then I also was a model maker at ILM and worked on the Star Wars prequels and special editions and that sort of stuff. I met Grant when he started at Skywalker Ranch in 1993 doing, I think he actually was already an employee at that point, but he had been an intern. So I actually might have met him in 92 when he was an intern, but I don't remember that. I do remember him in 93. So take it away. No.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I started at ILM as a model maker briefly on a motion simulator ride called Body Wars, and then came back in the about 1990, and was back in the model shop as a production assistant. And at some point, I started working with Don. Don would come over from the archives on loan and work in the model shop, and we started working together and became friends. And then we were doing a touring exhibition of models in Japan. We were refurbishing a lot of models from the movies and props because they hadn't really seen light of day for, I don't know, 20 years or something, and almost 15, 20. And anyway, so I helped Don with that, and it was while we were working on that exhibition that I think Grant arrived at Skywalker Ranch as an intern and later an employee of THX. And then Don left the archives and went to Australia for a short time. And I was the third archivist he was alluding to. So I stepped in and filled his big shoes, and did that for a year or so. And everything was starting to take off in terms of Star Wars character appearances at that point, because it'd been busy all through the 90s, but now we were starting to get in closer to when George was going to work on the special editions and licensing was going crazy. So more and more character appearances. And I did a lot of stuff with Grant in that respect. And we'll probably get more into how he did that, what his involvement with character. Take it away, Adam.
Adam Savage, former Mythbuster, and I've actually had the pleasure of two whole families with Grant. I first met him at ILM in '98 when I first got up there, and it is actually really sweet that I'm here with Don and Nelson, because you guys formed, along with Grant and me and Fawn and a few others, a kind of a small cadre within ILM that that deeply loved the franchise for itself as people, as in addition to professionally, right?
Mhm.
Like there was I remember sitting there with Don at one point going over a detail for some build for episode 2, and the supervisor at that point going, yeah, that's one of those details that you guys who care about this thing, that matters to you, so just make it work how you want. and I found fast friends in you guys really early, and Grant was part of that sort of welcoming committee. I worked with Grant at ILM for 5.5 years, and then we actually pitched Grant to Discovery for season 1 of Mythbusters, and there were some, I don't even remember what some of their they liked Scotty Chapman better at that point, but we also had some comments. And so when Scotty decided to leave, Jamie and I sat down with Grant and we went over the comments that Discovery had, and we sculpted with him some ideas and sent in a different tape. And we brought him into the Mythbusters fold. I've been his pit crew for his first BattleBots competition, and I was not an awesome pit crew guy, but he was still very patient with me. I got to see firsthand Grant's equanimity, his incredible professionalism, and this infused every interaction that I think everyone who's ever met Grant has, a genuine sweetness that's not put on, that is and was an abiding piece of Grant, and one of the loveliest things about knowing him.
Yeah, definitely.
So I have some photos I'm going to start playing. If our viewers have any memories or pictures they want to share, please add to the chat or the comments. That would be great. And Adam touched on this a little bit at least already, but for those of you that haven't, what was your first impression or your first memorable, how do you remember your first meeting with Grant?
So the first time, like Nelson said, we were working on this huge exhibition that was going to Japan. So I had a small crew of ILM people up at the ranch working on restoring the models. But we also had, everybody wanted to come to the archives. Everyone wanted to see the archives. And I was like, sure, whatever. And so we had a lot of friends. Let's put it that way. A lot of people wanted to be our friends because we had the keys to the candy store, and so through that we were meeting people from other departments, and particularly some people from the THX division. And at that point there was the THX division, there's the home THX division, which Grant was a part of. And
that's my set. It's built to the wrong size. I totally screwed that one up.
We have to talk about the KISS sign and that whole thing in a little bit. But so we were friends with these people in the THX division, and my very first memory of him is when we went to. We were going to lunch, and I went over to THX, I think, and he was hanging on to one of the women there, her leg, and she was dragging him. and I'm thinking, gosh, what an idiot. And then he came to lunch, and again, his enthusiasm was infectious. And that was my very first memory of him. He, a silly kid. He's only like 23, 24 years old or something like that. And then, like I said, we invited him to the archives and everything. But now I'll let you tell whatever your first impression.
Well, similar. I mean, you invited him and he came up to see the archives, and I think my very first impression was similar in that, who is this nerd? He was kind of silly and all that, but that sweetness that Adam alluded to, that just genuine kind of interest in everybody. He just loved to hear, about what you were doing and check that out. And his humor was really something early on that I think we all bonded with, because he had a real knack for impressions, for parody, for all kinds of, off the cuff remarks and things. So it was just so fun to have him around.
The impression thing is Don brought it up during one of the Zoom chats we've done in the last couple months.
Yeah.
I had forgotten, but Grant was such a master impressionist. He would not only give you an impression of somebody, but he could tell an entire sort of speed run tale about that person doing their impression and doing the world building around them.
Right.
I just remember laughing so hard I couldn't breathe a couple of times with him. And he's also the inventor of this with Jamie Heineman.
Yes.
This is Grant's joke.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So sorry, I was just going to ask if those are impressions of like famous people or characters, or your guys' friends and coworkers.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. Yeah. We had this running joke at the ranch, and I think Grant instituted it when we were all working together. We all had to pretend like, George really, George Lucas, that is, was trying to, understand everybody, but he didn't quite get it right. So we all had names that we said George would call us. So I was Dan instead of Don. Nelson was Nathan. Grant was Graham. There's other people that worked there. My wife Anna was there. She was Emma. So then Grant instituted this impression of George, where he would be saying, hi Dan, how's it going? How's R2 today? And of course he did it much better than I, but that was the whole gist of it. And so it was a kind of a running joke between us. And I remember one time he started doing it. We actually were doing it together, and George was standing behind us, so but yeah. He would impersonate famous. He would impersonate other people, all of our friends, and that's.
It was the coworker impressions that I found most surprising. That anyone who's a wonderful impressionist brings up something about a person that you know really well, but you never really realize this one thing about them, and that was what Grant was always like tapping into.
Yeah, he could zero in on that. Yeah.
So tell us about the kiss sign. I don't know about the kiss sign, Don.
Oh, so yeah, it's come up a couple of times. These are great. I mean, there's like stories behind each and every one of these photographs, so we could go on for hours and days. That's, by the way, the original, the R2 we made for episode 1. And there's a whole story with that one too. Yeah. But the kiss sign was, so in it was like 96, I think it was. ILM always had a Halloween party, and they started out much more casual, and then they got more progressively more sophisticated and more structured, and people would dress up, obviously, and then there's a lot of creativity there. Of course, not everyone was model makers there, but even the people that were in the less creative roles came in and it really brought their A game to the creative aspects of the Halloween party. And so people would dress up, and some would get really elaborate, some would get silly, some would get political, that sort of stuff. Well, there was a group of people from the ranch that Nelson was more friends with than I, that had done the year before you guys had done the Village People.
Yeah.
And so there was 4 of them, and they even performed on stage lip syncing to YMCA. Oh. And when the next year, when Halloween rolled around, one of the guys had left, and they wanted to do Kiss. And so they brought me into the fold and asked me to be Peter Criss, the drummer. Now I got the guy with no rhythm to be the drummer, but that's another story. And so we dressed up, and of course, Nelson was making props. I think my wife did a lot of the costume bits. Nelson and I did the makeup on all the guys and everything. And then Grant wanted to, be involved somehow. And so he made a Kiss flashing sign. And like I said, it's in one of those early pictures. I still have it, as a matter of fact. He laser cut. He was one of the first guys that just jumped in and taught himself the AutoCAD and to do laser cutting. And he laser cut the sign, the logo, and the KISS logo. And then I remember we went to a store and found Christmas tree lights, and we wired it with the Christmas tree lights. And then he put he created some sort of circuit so it could sequence and to the beat of the music. And then he arranged for one of the stagehands at ILM to raise it above the stage that day. And then at the appropriate time when we'd go up and lip sync to "I Want to Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day," that would come down and be flashing, and so it added a lot of production value to our thing. We won second place. We lost to the Giant Pumpkin King, but yeah. And then he also there it is. Yeah. And that's Nelson on the right.
On the right there.
Yeah. And yes, he was also dressed as our roadie, so I don't think there's a picture in there.
Yeah,
but he had a wig. He had a wig on. He had all the lanyards, and so.
That's great, Adam. You said there was a story to one of these other pictures. Is that this one?
No, so this is a set built for episode 2, and it's the entrance to the nightclub. And this I think is the biggest screw up I had at ILM. I think I transposed one of the percentages, length or width, and there's an aspect to this set that had to be digitally squashed after we built it, and it was totally my fault. Yeah, that's all. Just one of my biggest failures.
Is that like the thing in This Is Spinal Tap? Where they said 11 feet and you get 11.
I specifically remember my supervisor lamenting to me. He said, "Now I'm going to have to go to CG and ask them to fix this, and they're going to hold it over my head for months." I'm really sorry, boss. Look, one of the other things is because I got to work on a bunch of sets. Grant was he was a surpassingly talented electronics engineer, but also a super talented modeler. And so I worked with him in many different capacities, but frequently he'd come in towards the end to do exactly what's happening in this photo, to light things up. And it's never a trivial exercise, depending on the lighting requirements and the set requirements and how much the model makers had stayed out of your way for wiring and things like that. And I think Grant has a surprising number of pictures in Cinefex because he's the one wiring electrics on a finished set.
Yeah, that's right. He also he did a really the stage guys. So we would build the stuff in the models, and it's one thing to have the talent and build the models and all that sort of stuff. But the three things that really added to it was the paint. We had an amazing team of painters at ILM. The lighting, that Grant did, and people like Grant, other people like John Foreman, J.P. Kelly, and then there was the guys that actually shot the things, that are cameramen. And there was always a kind of a tension between the stage guys and the model shop guys. The model shop tended to have longer work because we had the build time and everything to that, and the stage guys kind of came in at the end and shot it, and they never seemed to get the glory like the model shop guys always did. And Grant was one of the few people that seemed to bridge that, and those guys love Grant as well. And when he worked with on the set, supporting the model for shooting and everything like that, he was everyone just adored having him on stage with him. So that's by the way, that's Grant's first work with R2D2. That's
oh wow.
That's one of the that's us looking at all the pieces that I'm standing there with him. But we had one R2 that was we called the A unit for appearances, and that was the R2 that I started with and everything back in '87, and it was one of the only R2s that was complete. We had 12 R2s or something in the archives, but that was the only one that was actually still in good shape, and we would take out for any whatever appearances. And I was constantly fixing it up and cleaning it up, but it had this like 1981 technology of radio control in it. And so this was like the mid 90s now, and I just asked Grant, do you think he could clean this up, fix this up, make it a little less, more foolproof meaning for myself, because I didn't know anything about electronics. And he did. And so he came over and he cleaned it up. And then there was a second R2 that was cosmetically in pretty good shape. And he made that another appearance unit. So we had an A unit and a B unit. So
were those Tony Dyson ones, or were either of those aluminum, Don?
No, I'm pretty sure those were both the fiberglass ones, the Tony Dyson ones. Yeah. We eventually did do some aluminum ones for episode 2, but that was
you guys both look like you're 14 there.
Sorry, because I had hair though. I think Grant was about 14. I was.
I will say one of the things about seeing all these photos reminds me that I had my kids while working at ILM, and I felt like a full-grown adult when I was working there. And I now look back 22 plus years later, and I'm like, I was so not an adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
We work with you, Adam. We can vouch for the fact that.
Yeah, there you go. That checks out. I think Grant's first impression of me, like the first impression he would do of me, was me constantly tapping on everything.
Oh, right. Yeah, he used to come in like beating on your chest. Yeah.
Yep.
That's it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I promise is that something popped up on a Twitter feed. There was something about ILM and Spice Girls. And it's something more recent. And I said ILM has another connection to the Spice Girls thanks to Grant Imahara. And somebody said, "Oh, well, what is the story?" I said, "Well, tune in today and I'll tell you." Well, the story is that Grant, like I said earlier, taught himself AutoCAD so that he can use the laser cutter, and there's a lot of adventures with the laser cutter. And Grant, he burned himself on the laser cutter. He burned
on
down the laser
once, did he not? On purpose?
No, I don't think he burned it on purpose.
But that was this scar, right? That was
he reached across the beams and he caught himself. But there was also a time he burned down the laser cutter, but that's yet another story. We had a laser, we called it the laser room, and it was, 4 computers and then the laser cutter just outside. And at that time, there were probably about 4 of us, Adam and myself and Grant, and I think Fawn might have been part of that as well at that point. And we were the only ones, Scott McNamara, John Foreman. So we would alternate which, computer to use. But anyway, they would always name the computers as opposed to just having a number. And of course, throughout the whole ILM had names. And so, there was the Hoth printer for a laser printer and that sort of stuff. Well, we needed to name the laser, the computers, and Grant had the idea of naming them, because we had 4, naming them after the Spice Girls. And he also had, he like made it into the Spice Girls altar almost. I mean, there were pictures all over the walls of the Spice Girls. It got a little too much. And
the keychains, there were the keychains attached to each computer that played the sound of each Spice Girl introducing herself.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, we used to hold up the phone intercom and go, "Hello, everyone. This is Mel B."
And so it got. I think someone complained, and we had to take the pictures down. But the computers for a brief period of time were named after the Spice Girls. So there was Baby, Posh. What are the other ones? I can't remember.
Scary, Sporty,
Ginger.
Sporty, yeah.
One of the other things that happened in the laser room is we used it for LAN parties at lunch.
That's right. Yeah, when we had more. Yeah.
When we moved over to D building, we had like 7 computers, I think, something like that.
Right?
And every day at lunch, we would be there playing Unreal Tournament, shooting each other. And again, like a bunch of us had kids around the same time. There's something about that laser room at D building that to me typifies for me the sort of locus of my ILM experience.
Yeah.
And I just remember, I remember Grant at one point stalking me because he could hear me walking down the hallway he was in from my computer.
Yeah, Grant was very good at Unreal. I was lousy at it. I kept getting killed, but I know Grant was pretty darn good at it. Now you got to tell the story about the Main Street electrical crew.
Oh, yeah, so this is another ILM Halloween costume party. I had come up with the idea of wanting to do the Main Street electrical parade from Disneyland. And, I approached Grant about it, and he was, yeah, let's do it. That'd be fun. And so, again, his laser cutting skills, he did, again, we used Christmas tree lights and all of those little places where the lights come through the drum there and everything. And on the floats, he wired it all. We used the same kind of batteries that we used for R2-D2, the dry gel cells. And he hooked all that up. They were all inside that cart there behind the train. Grant was Pete the Dragon. So he was riding in the float behind the train, and I was the train engine. There's Grant in the Dragon, and I was riding in the train. Anyway, we won again, second overall prize. I mean,
we never could win first.
Always a bridesmaid.
I know. I want to get up to number 2, but anyway, Grant and I won a trip to Hawaii, which we took. You've seen a few pictures from that throughout the slideshow.
Amazing.
One of my favorites is the one where he's on the edge of the caldera, looking into the caldera, and we walked amongst lightning flows and all kinds of things. Grant was always, again, the science and exploration and discovery, I think were big for him. But just the idea that he would lean out over that caldera, I think that was indicative of how he always kind of pushed himself a little out of his comfort zone and was willing to test himself a little bit. And, anyway.
Totally agree.
So I think part of the story that's missing too is that Grant used to take part in these appearances, and sometimes it would the character appearance, that is. Sometimes he would be dressed as C-3PO. Sometimes he would operate R2. And then sometimes you've seen some pictures of him as an Imperial officer, but Nelson got to do a lot of traveling with him.
These are in Istanbul, actually. These are.
This is for a Lego commercial, right?
Yeah, it was a Lego Star Wars.
And that's
Lego
Jillian,
commercial.
the lady that's with him, where he was leaning on her.
Jillian. Yeah, she was character appearance coordinator there.
Yeah, after we left.
And right, and we did a lot of travels together to Turkey, to Australia, to London. When you guys were filming episode 1, we got to come over, not for a character appearance, but I think Rick McCallum had actually given us permission to come visit the set, as long as we paid to get over there, and we did, because that was quite an opportunity. And
that picture is from a licensing summit that we did that's at Skywalker Ranch. This was just as a kickoff of episode 1, before the movie was being made, and where they brought all the licensees to Skywalker Ranch and asked them kind of brainstorm for a couple days as to like what they can do for the franchise and that sort of thing. And and there was this huge party in the scoring stage. The Skywalker Ranch in the tech building has a huge scoring stage for scoring movies and actually recording albums and that sort of thing. And so they transformed the scoring stage into the cantina from Star Wars. And so we had actually they were all pretty much ILM employees. Those are 2. The lady was from Lucasfilm Games, and I think Nine Nub is whoever's playing that is from Lucasfilm Games as well. And so Grant had played earlier in the day. He had played C-3PO for us when George announced for the very first time that he was had just started writing episode 1. And then we went into the party later. So Grant got out of the uncomfortable costume because, of course, droids weren't allowed in the cantina, and he got to play an Imperial officer. So.
Great.
There's a thing I saw on Don. You were saying that the stage guys loved Grant, and I will say that I think one of the main reasons was because Grant exemplified a kind of a really important aspect of film work, which is that you have to be super adaptive. And you've got to be able to improvise, even though sometimes you've spent months and months and hundreds of thousands of dollars building something in one way. When you get to set, you might have to pull off a whole thing and rejigger it. And you've got to respect that, you know, where you had 6 months to do the first one, you might only have 5 hours to do the second one. And Grant could do both of those, you know. Yeah. The number of times on Mythbusters, he pulled some crazy execution out of a hat at the last minute. Or, you know, with plenty of lead time, conducted some of the most beautiful experimental methodologies I've ever seen.
Yeah, and what was great too about his personality is that, you know, there's a stereotype of, you know, the IT guy being the, you know,
long suffering.
Yeah, or you know, yeah, very antisocial or whatever. And Grant was none of that. You know, he could fix your computer, and you know, he could wire the house and do everything and with a laugh. So yeah, he had all that going for him.
And he didn't. He was not a knowledge hoarder. And there weren't a lot of those at ILM, but still you could smell when you were getting a little too close to someone's expertise and they didn't like it. You never experienced that with Grant whatsoever. Whatever he knew was for your benefit if it could serve that. You know, he was going to tell you everything.
Well, he taught me AutoCAD. I mean, he taught me how to do AutoCAD, and he taught me how to use the laser cutter, and because I would keep going to him for the parts, and I finally said, you know, just show me how to do this. And so he'd stay with me after work, during lunch, whatever. He even taught classes for anybody else that wanted to.
Oh, wow.
At lunch, yeah.
Yeah. I think too that when he came in as a totally green model maker from THX, I think he really appreciated that in other people, all the mentors and the people that, you know, were patient and taught him things. You know, I think he just embraced that and passed it on.
That was definitely one of the things I prized most about working there, was when you came up with a cool solution for something. By the end of that day, almost everyone in the shop would have filed past your desk to see what is this new thing and how can we incorporate it?
Yeah, right. True.
So did any of you ever talk to Grant in terms of, was he a Star Wars fan before working at ILM, and what it meant to him to be part of the continuation of that series?
Yeah, he was a huge Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
Star Wars, Back to the Future. He had a great Crispin Glover impersonation. But he not only Star Wars. I mean, and that's, I think, why he and I particularly connected, is we were movie fans, you know. So we could just look at each other and say some obscure movie line, and we'd both understand it. We both get it. So he was a big movie buff in general, and certainly the movies of the '80s. That was his generation. But yeah, he definitely a big Star Wars fan.
Yeah, I was going to say those pictures just a little bit further back, Melissa, with the Olympic AT&T Olympic Pavilion, are Grant's where he's cutting his teeth at the model shop. That's the very first project he came in on. Yeah. Bies,
explain basically how he got to ILM now, because you had a lot to do with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, we covered how Don had kind of got him involved with the droids, and that kind of made both Don and I familiar with his skill set, and we always just felt he would be such a brilliant fit, you know, in the model shop. There was one guy who chiefly was responsible for all the miniature lighting and wiring and all that stuff, and we were getting really busy in the mid-90s, and it was way more than should be on just one person's shoulders. So they were lamenting in the model shop at that time about, you know, how are we going to do this? How are we going to accomplish all this work? We need somebody else who can do that kind of work. And I know someone. And so I said, his name's Grant, and you guys should check him out. You'd never be sorry if you did. And so I was given permission to contact Grant and have him come down for an interview. I can't remember if he came down or if it was a phone interview first, but you know, it didn't take long for them to realize that, you know, this guy had the chops and they should bring him in to do this. And, you know, they never looked back. I mean, because Grant, just his skill set, and he just immediately, like Don said, he learned AutoCAD, and And pretty soon, like Adam alluded to, he was actually a very good model maker as well. So picked up.
Yeah,
on
he
that
picked
really
up on
quickly,
skills very quickly. I mean, he was very adaptable that way. And then that transition for him to move from the ranch to ILM was a difficult decision for him. I remember talking to him about it because jobs at ILM were like, you could work a month and then not work the rest of the year, or and especially if you're at a specialization, you might not get work that much. So so it was a big change for him, because he had a full-time job with benefits and everything, and he didn't want to lose that. Yet at the same time, he recognized the opportunity. So we had another Zoom meeting with a bunch of his friends a few weeks ago, and the lady that was his boss, Monica, talked about that as well, and how he kind of came in torn about this decision, and she just encouraged him to go for it. And, there would always be a job back at the ranch if he needed it, but he never had to go back. So I think the initial job was only like a 4-week job. And so he kind of like took a leave of absence, but he didn't need to continue. So.
Yeah.
Adam, do you know if his decision to join Mythbusters had similar sort of concerns?
I don't know if he had specific concerns. We knew that Jamie and I and Tori were all completely clear that Grant was ideal to fit into the team and to complement and bring an interesting perspective. And also, of all the Mythbuster hosts, am I right about this? I think Grant's the only one with an actual engineering or science-based degree.
He was the only one that was really qualified.
Indeed. And, I do remember when he didn't, when they didn't accept him to be a host for the first season. I do remember him, again, with great equanimity, just being like, well, all right, that didn't happen. He didn't take it personally. It was just, film is film, and we take the good when we can, and we work hard when we need to. The number of times that we found ourselves in what felt like impossible situations, and sun is setting and cameras losing light, you've got to get the high speed shot. That making that show together bonded all of us in a way that feels really special. Yeah. And Grant was, I remember when Grant finally got one of his holy grail film props, which was one of the flight suits from Battlestar Galactica. He actually wore it over to M5 at a lunchtime during a day to come show it to me, and I was like. And there is Grant was always a geek, always a delightful film nerd of science fiction and fantasy. And sometimes you would, like Don, you said, you would give him a reference that was so deep, he'd almost feel like, is this revealing too much about myself that I get that reference? And then over the arc of the 20 plus years that I knew him, I saw him stop asking that question. Am I revealing too much by doing this? And just letting it all out at a certain point, letting all the passion for the film, letting all of his craftspersonship, letting all of that just come to fore.
Well, just going back to when he left to go to Mythbusters, by that point the show was quite successful already, and was running. So I think he certainly felt that this was a step in the right direction. We were devastated to have lost him at ILM, because we knew that was it. Although interestingly, a lot of people don't realize he did come back a couple times, and during the breaks of Mythbusters,
he came back.
Yeah, he helped us on a couple projects. Oh, wow. When we were up against the wall. It might have been for a few days or a week or so, but he did come in.
I do want to point out, it shouldn't go without saying, that Don is at least partially responsible for my getting Mythbusters, because I had to take a leave of absence from the Matrix sequels to go film those pilots, and I needed someone who could who could fill my shoes, and they hired someone way more qualified than me, and that was Dawn. So Dawn allowed me to go film the pilots of Mythbusters.
I'm still waiting for that check, Adam. You never sent me the check.
I got it right here, Dawn.
Yeah. Well, I remember when you went to do that because everyone's like, oh, yeah, like this is going to be successful.
I thought the same thing. I was like, yeah, that's never going to happen.
And that's what was cool about the show, and Grant in particular, and yourself for that matter, that you guys kind of made it cool to be a geek again. Well, again, ever, because certainly I'm a closet geek. I've been always afraid to show that side of me, but you guys never were. And that's one of the things that I think was really, really great about the show. And then the public, side of Grant that he showed to people as after the show, that he embraced that and let it be cool. It's been amazing just to look at all these things. There's a posting on his official page the other day from his mother, and the comments were so heartwarming from the people across the world. It was my first time actually watching. I know you deal with this every day, but watching social media just explode, because within 5 minutes he had 2,500 likes and 100 comments, and they kept on going on. And the amount of people that have been inspired by him, especially people from disadvantaged backgrounds, Asian, people of color, that he was able to inspire and be a hero to. And I think that's just been, the coolest thing of his legacy.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Don't mind pausing for about 15 minutes. I'd love it if you stuck around and we can continue this conversation. We'll let Adam have his In-N-Out burger, and I'm going to bring in some of the fans. Oh, sorry, Don.
Yeah. I just say before we do that, I know I mentioned this to you earlier. I just wanted to actually, this is a first time we're publicly announcing this, that that outpouring of love for Grant, and so many people have been saying we want to help some way, we want to do something. I'd like to formally announce that we have formed the Grant Imahara STEAM Foundation. It's actually a real thing. It's a proper, it's going to be a nonprofit. We're in really early stages as to what we're going to be, but it's going to help people in the STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, which is something was important to Grant. A lot of people don't know that in the early 2000s, he was a mentor to a robotics team in Richmond, California here. And he really changed a lot of those people's lives. And we want to do something similar. So again, very early stages. We're still sorting things out. The board is made up of 7 people, myself included, 5 other close friends of Grant that have known him for over 20 years, and Grant's mother. And Grant's mother is fully supportive of the foundation. She has obviously is still dealing very much with his loss, but she is just overwhelmed with the amount of support and what everyone meant, what Grant meant to everyone. So, but watch Grant's official Facebook page. We'll be updating with more news, and we're going to be reaching out to the community for help as well. So,
yeah, I know his fans will definitely want to help honor his legacy in that way, and that's a great way to do it. So yeah, Don or Nelson, you're welcome to stay on screen if you want. I'm going to have... I
will take off for 15 minutes.
Okay, we'll let you know when to come back, Adam. Thanks.
All right.
And then if Helen and Sean want to hop on.
Do you want one of us to pop up?
I can hop.
Hi, everyone.
Sure. Thank you, Nelson.
All right, I'll hop up with them.
I'll call you back when we're ready. So Sean will pop into that spot. I've got to turn off my...
Hi, Sean. Hi,
I didn't mean that.
Hi, Don. Nice to see you again.
Same here.
Hi, Sean. Nice to meet you.
Sean, you don't happen to be an R2 builder, Sean, do you?
No, not at all. I don't know who that is in the background behind me there.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, just fine.
I just wanted to have a moment to talk with some fans who had met Grant and worked with him. We've also got a video here from the 501st Legion that I'm going to go ahead and play, and then we'll talk to Helen and Sean as well. Okay. Oops.
Grant Imahara was an electrical engineer, roboticist, television host, and actor. He is well known for his work on Mythbusters, White Rabbit Project, and competed on BattleBots with his robot Deadblow. He started his career at Industrial Light and Magic as a modeler, an animatronic technician, and controlled R2-D2's movements in the Star Wars prequel trilogy. The 501st recognizes those who have contributed their time, skills, and talent to the Star Wars saga in some special way, as well as to those who have shown tremendous support of the 501st and the Star Wars fandom.
Hello, Vince Bridgel here from the Golden Gate Garrison.
And I'm Dee Ellington, also from the Golden Gate Garrison.
Earlier this year, we traveled to SoCal and had an opportunity to visit the studio. And in that studio, we so happened to meet Grant. We were able to hang out with him for a little bit.
It was pretty cool because it was pretty awesome just knowing who he was and just seeing him there. But he actually said hi to us and spent quite a bit of time talking to us about something that he happened to be working on while we were there in the studio.
Yeah, we were able to hang out with him in his little shop. It was actually pretty late at night, so we got to see what he was working on, which I think everyone is aware of now. You can go to his Facebook page or on social media and see what he's working on. But it's really impressive to see his work ethic, his passion, and his excitement for what he was doing. Also, since it's a huge benefit to others, it's just really impressive.
Yeah, I think it was such a testament to the type of person that he was, having just spent maybe 20 to 30 minutes meeting with us, and it left such a lasting impression. I think you would agree on us, and we know that feeling was felt all over the world for people that just had a few minutes of time to meet with him, and he's just an example of the type of person that this world needs, and someone that is an honorary member of the Golden Gate Garrison.
We definitely need more Grants in this world.
On April 2nd, 2011, at WonderCon in San Francisco, Grant was inducted into the 501st Legion as an honorary member.
Hi, my name is John Schlosser. I'm a member of the Golden Gate Garrison, the 501st, Rebel Legion, and Droid Builder. I wanted to pass along my story of Grant Imahara, as I was part of the team that inducted him into the 501st. I believe this was at WonderCon in 2011. We had gotten word from Bonnie Burton, she worked at Lucasfilm at the time, she'd like for us to induct him into the 501st at WonderCon. So the day that we did it, we were all gathered around outside some meeting rooms, taking a break, a lot of us were in costume. I was in my new wolf costume. We heard he was coming. We all ran around, set a place. We all blocked in their microphones, probably about 20 of us or so. And we were all there. He came around the corner and ran right into us as our PO at the time, Ed Silva, I was the XO at the time, was holding the plaque for him. And we inducted him right there. It was kind of funny. He was in his Doctor Who costume at the time, and he was rushing to get to a panel. So he definitely wasn't expecting it. He was very surprised to see it. He was very gracious, very happy. Stayed around, talked to a few of us, took photos. It was a very nice moment. It was very good to be part of it. He was very, very gracious person, always willing to give back. He and I passed across several times over the next couple of years at Comic-Con and other events. Talked to him about droids. We were big Battlestar Galactica fans. We're in a couple photo shoots for Battlestar Galactica. And he's always a gracious, really nice person. Touched a lot of people, always good at his time. He's always good to people in the Bay Area, good to us. He'll definitely be missed, and I was glad to be able to take part and be part in his induction into the 501st wasn't so much for him when he worked at Lucasfilm and all the things he had done for Star Wars.
He passed away on July 13th, 2020. Whether you knew him from Mythbusters or Star Wars, you can't deny he was a talented, brilliant, and gracious person who shared his passion with everyone through his work. He is one with the Force now. He will truly be missed.
Okay, so I want to thank Ginny Lindquist and the Golden Gate Garrison for putting that together for us. Helen, I know that you're also part of the 501st Legion. Is that right? Do you want to tell us about your experience with Grant too?
Sure. Yes, I'm actually a 501st honorary member and a regular 501st costume member. I became a costume member after I was already an honorary. I'm the co-author of the New Essential Guide to Alien Species from Lucas Books. It's one of the large coffee table sized books that give you kind of the anthropological background of Star Wars. Many of the things that you see on the movies, we kind of document why a species does something like that. Things like why Togrutans wear an animal headpiece made of animal teeth. That's one of the things I got to create for Lucasfilm. But my story with Grant was at DragonCon 2007 was the first big con I went to after the book came out, and I was on all the Star Wars panels, and I thought it would be fun to give a copy of the book to Grant because while he created droids, I created aliens, and I thought it was kind of cute. So my friend Lori Sartre from New England Garrison of the 501st, she and I went up to Autograph Alley, and we went to the table, and Carrie was busy talking to somebody, and Tori was just kind of hanging out in the background. So I went up to Grant, and I took the book out of my bag, and I was very, very nervous because I was a huge fan of the Mythbusters. My son at the time was a teenager, and he'd grown up with the show and just adored it. And I watched it because of him. And I was an unapologetic Grant fangirl. So I took the book out of my bag and I handed it to him. And he looks down at the cover, and it was late in the day. It was late in the con. And, you know, if you've been to the bigger shows, you know by Saturday of the con, you're kind of tired, especially if you've been on panels and you've been doing signings. But when he saw my name on the cover and I introduced myself, he kind of got a look of relief. And I think for a moment, I went from just a person looking for an autograph to a coworker or a colleague, because he realized I was kind of part of the larger Lucasfilm contributor family. And we were talking about the book, and he's flipping through different passages, and he's like, oh, this is so cool, this is so cool. When at that point, Tori kind of noticed we were looking at a book that wasn't one that was on the table, and looks over like this over Grant's shoulder. Wait a minute, and then looks at me. You wrote that? And Tori just tears around him and like takes the book out of his hands, and he's going fanboy on the book. So I had that one little moment where it kind of transcended the setting we were in, and we were just people who loved what they did and fully appreciated. We got to give back by contributing part of Star Wars. So it was one of my favorite moments as a Star Wars author and as a Star Wars fan that I got to spend a few minutes connecting with him. The picture that you see there was taken by Lori Sartre of the 501st Legion's New England Garrison. She's a good friend of mine. But to give you another little funny piece, a lot of people have mentioned Grant's Battlestar Galactica costume. When I posted on Facebook a few days ago that I was going to be doing this, a friend of mine chimed in that he sold Grant the boots he was wearing for that costume. He eBayed them because they didn't quite fit him, and turns out that Grant bought them from him. So I think that's a funny little note to add. Grant was one of us. You know, those of us who are 501st members, we know when we're sourcing costumes, we go to eBay. Sometimes that's the only place you can find parts, and Grant was genuinely one of us.
That's great, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean, I know you have a story to tell as well about that great video we saw of the child with some chicken nuggets.
I do. So yeah, I was like just about everybody else. I was a big fan of Mythbusters since season 1. And as much as I love Scotty Chapman on the show, I think the show really did hit its stride when Grant came on board. I think he was relatable to a lot of dudes like me. You know, I grew up in the Midwest, and I didn't have a lot of avenues, or basically they were doing my dream job. And I was, you know, when I was a kid, I loved Star Wars, obviously, but as much as I loved Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, I wanted to be Phil Tippett, and I wanted to be, you know, Ben Burt, and I wanted to be the guys making this stuff. And, you know, there wasn't really an avenue for that, you know, from where I grew up. But then I see Mythbusters, and you know, I see these guys come together, and this sort of this kinship or this fraternity or this club of guys that do this stuff that I love so much. And in my own way, you know, I pursued it as a hobby, and, you know, I've had a pretty fulfilling life, and you can probably tell by just the total amount of just stuff in my room behind me here that I'm pretty passionate about it. Well, last year after The Mandalorian, I'll get to my Grant story now. Last year after The Mandalorian premiered and the world got introduced to the phenomenon that is Baby Yoda, or the child as it's officially called, I kind of knew everyone was going to want one. And I also had heard that there weren't going to be any retail products available for a while. So I digitally sculpted a 3D printable action figure of the child, and then gave it away to the world in the hope that maybe somebody could get inspired to do something good with it and give away toys. Now, you can see in the text there, if you read it, that what I posted was, whatever anyone thinks this set of files is worth, take whatever that amount of money is and go buy some toys and give it to some kids. And a lot of people did, and I was incredibly grateful about that. But also a lot of people were just happy, I think, to be able to have some manifestation of the child, you know, available to them because they love the character so much. Well, after it'd been out for, you know, I made the post, and then sometime later I saw that I got tagged in something by Grant Imahara, and I was like, wait, what? So I went and looked, and Grant had taken the challenge. He somehow the files had gone viral and found their way to him, and he decided that he was going to build a version of the child, an animatronic version, to take to children's hospitals, and he posted about it and posted his intent. And not only did he do that, but he also made a significant donation of toys per my kind of request. And I just thought that was incredibly awesome. So I just, you know, I made a comment on it just as myself on his post and said, thank you for doing this. You know, I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate you tagging me in it. There was no requirement, no need for you to, but I appreciate it. And then out of nowhere, then suddenly we became friends on Facebook. And then he started sending me pictures of his build in progress, which again, he didn't have to do that. I mean, he didn't owe me a thing in the world. You know, he didn't have to, he just did it because he was just a genuinely good and sincere person from my experience with him. And I was incredibly grateful that he was, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional about it here. Give me a second. Just incredibly grateful that he took the time to engage with me, you know, not just take something that I did and take it and do something fantastic with it, which is in and of itself flattering to me. But he took the time to actually give me a behind the scenes sort of plug to what he was doing as he was doing it. And that was just incredibly meaningful to me. And I can't thank him enough for that. And it even transcended past, you know, once he debuted. This last picture that you're seeing here, he actually sent me the day before, I think. He made his public announcement about the child. And these are still shots from the videos that he actually sent me. And it was just amazing what he was able to do with it. And even after that project was kind of concluded, then I started on the R2 build you can see in the background. Then he and I started we kept the conversation going. He kept being friends with me, even through my R2 build. And that was just, I don't know, I can't put a value on how meaningful that was to me. And I don't want to overinflate the nature of my relationship. I mean, it was very brief. It was, you know, it wasn't like, I don't have the history that Don and Nelson and Adam have with him, obviously, but for just a simple fanboy from Texas to have someone that I've looked up to and admired. And I can say the same to Adam as well. I actually got the chance to interact with Adam a couple years ago at Comic-Con when I participated in a build for the Magic Wheelchair event they had there, the big Star Wars build. I just, they oftentimes people say you never meet your heroes because, they'll be let down, and it's never been the case. And I'm just entirely grateful that I had that opportunity and very saddened that we lost him.
Thank you so much.
I was just going to say, Sean, I think that was Grant's special superpower, that he made everyone feel like a friend.
Yeah.
And I think he was so generous that way with his time. By the way, he was incredibly proud of that Baby Yoda. Last time I'd seen him in person was about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. We always only text each other on birthdays, but he sent me, when he finished it, he texted me that same image.
Yeah.
And said, "Look what I just did." So he was very proud of that.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, and I know that there are thousands more stories from fans who met Grant and interacted with him. And if our viewers have any to share in the chat or the comments, I know that this is a great place for sharing those. So, Helen and Sean, I really want to thank you for telling your stories. Do you have any other last?
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If Nelson and Adam are out there lurking, we'll trade them back in and talk.
Thank you, everyone.
Stories. Thank you so much.
That was awesome. That was really awesome. Thanks, Sean and Helen. That was great.
It was, yeah.
And you're right, Don. That really was like, I will say, over the years, spending 20 years working with Grant, we have had our share of difficulties, like you do with a coworker. You have uncomfortable interactions, and that's just part of life and part of working. And it's still Grant's sweetness shines through even those moments, of like just being totally respectful and totally present with you. There's a way in which people who met Grant for the first time would come away feeling, oh, he was really nice, and the answer is no. That was that you were getting the whole thing. That was Grant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And knowing him before he was famous, I think we can all attest that he was always like that. It wasn't, the fame didn't change him. Somebody said, actually, it was the former president of Lucasfilm, when we had a little mini memoriam for Grant, and he wrote me as a separate email after the fact, and Gordon Radley, and he said, so many people don't get they should get everything that is due them because of the kind of person they are, but they don't. And it's great to see that Grant got his not only the fame, but the adoration that everybody that he deserved. He really did deserve it all. So. Yeah,
Don, I remember when his Baby Yoda first hit social media, I texted him immediately. And that was the last interaction we had. I texted him and said, "What a magnificent masterpiece of work." He just texted back and said, "Thanks, man. Thank you, Doctor." I think he and I always called each other Doctor.
Yeah, my last interaction is Adam was part of this group. I was originally part of it, but I never completed it. We had the R2 Builders group at ILM, or there was a Romeo Delta club.
Romeo Delta, the secret R2 group.
Yeah, and Fawn Davis, myself, Fawn Davis, Adam, Mark Buck, I think, was part of it. Grant,
Billy.
Eventually, Billy came on as well. And the idea was we're going to make our own R2D2, but of course we can't make, we can't use the molds or anything like that. We're going to make everything from scratch. So that was the original intention, and we started doing that. And we were being model makers. We all made patterns and that sort of stuff.
And also, no R2D2 parts are the same across any R2D2s. Right. Every single part is different on every R2 by small amounts.
That's right. Yeah, he's like, measure one. I measure this one. It's 18 inches in diameter. That one's 18 and a quarter. I don't know. So anyway, we did this secret special club. It wasn't so secret, really. and interest fell off. Some of us fell off, like myself. Adam, I think you were the first one to actually complete your R2 from that group.
Yeah, during a break between Mythbusters seasons 2 and 3, I think, actually, way back in like 05.
But we started this in 2000. I think it was like right after episode 1, 1999, 2000, something like that. Made it very, somewhere around there. Anyway, and those guys, Fawn and Grant and Billy continued more recently trying to get theirs finished. And my last interaction with Grant is when he finished his R2, which was about a few weeks before he passed away. Yeah. And he sent me a picture. He says, "Hey, look what I did." I said, "Awesome." So it was somehow appropriate. That was our last interaction.
Yeah. Full circle.
Yeah.
So did Grant ever talk to any of you guys about the fame that he had, or about what it was like to have fans and interact with them?
Yeah. It's complicated, right? Like any amount of notoriety dovetails beautifully with the imposter complex that we all hold inside of us. And Grant was no stranger to that. It was certainly something that we talked about. And that was actually something else that hadn't occurred to me until you asked that question, Melissa. I've been in therapy for most of my life. My mom is a therapist. My wife is a therapist. I believe in the talking cure, and I love being psychoeducated, and I love unpacking myself and situations around me. And Grant was always there for that kind of discussion. I think one of the reasons he was so good at impressions is he was interested in people and he watched them. He took note of what was going on. He saw outside of himself. And the ability to do that can sometimes be hampered by fame and notoriety, especially when you jump on a train like Mythbusters. And at the same time, the five of us are very much all of a similar mold of what you see is pretty much what you get. And that created a really nice grounding for all of us.
The only time he ever mentioned it to me is when just after he started, he found it so distracting to have a camera in his face at all times. He said it was so disconcerting, and it was so it was so difficult to work around, you know.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine what that would be like. Yeah. That's why I was never on camera.
Yeah. It is a thing to have honed your skills to be fast at what you do, and then to be asked to do it even faster than that, and then to have cameras pointed at you which slow you down. Mm-hmm. That was something that Grant and all five of us used to get the shits about that one. What do you mean I only have 3 hours? Stop filming.
Yeah.
It seems like in the comments people want to hear more about the laser cutting stories. So I don't know if you have more you can share about.
I recently found Don and Nelson. You'll recognize these. I recently found some little laser cuts of the light bulb Industrial Light and Magic logo.
That's what burned down the laser cut.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Because what I remember was the production laptops of senior staff at ILM back in the late 90s, early aughts was PowerBook, the black Wall Street PowerBooks. And Grant, I guess they asked him if he could, and he replaced the Apple logo with a glowing ILM logo. So he was taking apart ILM management laptops and laser cutting the ILM logo into the lid and then making it backlit and turning it out. And that's the job on which he burned down the laser cutter?
No, sorry. I thought you were talking about the little, so we were giving out not crew gifts, but people were they were like cut out of 3/4 inch thick acrylic.
Oh, yeah.
Light bulbs. It was the ILM logo. It was a light bulb with a little gear around it. And Grant, so we had a laser cutter that was 2 foot by 4 foot, and somebody dismantled there's a safety switch so that when you open up the lid, the laser cutter would stop working. But someone dismantled that for some reason. It was either Grant or John Foreman. I'm not quite sure who did that. And the way the laser cutter worked is the laser was down beneath, and then through a series of mirrors, it came up to the head, and then it went on an X and Y axis to do the laser cutting. So there was this beam of laser that was going from the back of the machine to the front of the machine that is invisible, of course, unless there was smoke or something, some particulate in the air. And again, Grant was opened the thing up. This is the burning the arm story. Grant was opening the thing up to see something, and he went to move something out of the way, and of course the laser was still going. So he put his arm right in front of the beam, and he had a scar.
I remember
in his arm because it went right into his arm instantaneously, just like that. But the burning down the laser cutting story was that we were making these laser cut light bulbs are only about 2 inches tall or something like that, and so you'd lay a slab of plexiglass down onto the bed, 2 foot by 4 foot sheet, and then the file was already set. You turn it on and let it go. And he was told the thicker the material, I think it might have been a ½ inch, but the thicker the material, the slower it goes, and it sits there and cooks its laser through the plastic and that. And he was told, just put it on and go home. Turn it on and go home. And another thing that you had to do is you had to leave the paper on the top and the bottom, because otherwise then it would char the plexiglass and it wouldn't look clear and all that sort of stuff. So he did that. He charred it, and it was like 11:30 at night, and I get this phone call, and of course, panic is like, what happened? And it's Grant. He's going, the laser cutter's on fire. And what had happened was that all this slow burning and everything, and I think it caught up some of the paper on it, or so, I don't know what exactly. And it just kept going. There was no safeguards to stop it from going, and it just kept burning in the same spot and caused a fire, which then melted the big plexiglass top that the thing was on, which then burst open, and then the sprinklers went. And of course, sprinklers, they don't just stop when the fire goes out. They just keep going until somebody turns the water off. And this was upstairs in a loft that we had. People were saying, I didn't see the actual immediate aftermath. I was there in the next a couple of days later or something like that. But they said there was literally a waterfall coming down the stairs of the water.
Oh my God!
So people's desks were flooded, and it was a big mess. So.
Yeah, and lest we lay this all at Grant's feet, everyone who owns a laser cutter who might write about it would have a chapter called "The Fire." All laser cutters eventually catch something on fire.
Exactly. I've done it myself a few times.
Yeah, as have I. Yeah. Totally.
But he thought he was going to get fired for that. But fortunately, he was the one that he was told to do that, so he was saved. So.
Instead, he got promoted to Mythbusters.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Perfect.
A chance for mayhem. Bring that young man in.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You're our guy.
It was on Mythbusters that we discovered that Grant has my favorite weird phobia, which is he hated fish touching his feet.
Oh, I remember that episode.
That is such an awesomely strange and wonderfully unique thing to super dislike. I'm endlessly entertained by that.
That's why when he and I went to Hawaii, he wouldn't go snorkeling with me.
Oh wow, yeah, no, he would hate Hanama Bay.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Guys, I have to go.
Oh. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Adam. I really appreciate it. Dawn and Nelson, are you sticking around, or should I wrap things up?
You think, I'm cool to stay for a little bit longer if you need.
Sure, I could stay.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, I've got to take off, guys. This is lovely.
No, that's the
Dawn,
problem.
Nelson,
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much, Adam.
Take care.
Okay. All right. So I was going to go back to sharing some of the photos in case there were any other stories or anything like that in there that it might trigger. So I will go ahead and do that. We already talked a little bit about how fans can honor Grant's memory, about the STEAM Foundation that's getting set up. Are there other ways besides that you can think that people can, live their lives or do to really honor Grant?
Yeah. Well.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. No.
I think take an example from the way Grant lived his life, I think, and just, be kind and attentive to people. Push yourself a little bit, try to grow as a person, confront some of your fears and put yourself out of your comfort zone once in a while, and you'll grow as a person. That doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. But yeah, I think just paying attention to people and being kind to people and that sort of thing. Yeah, there's that shot of Grant on the edge of the caldera.
What was this one for?
I was going to ask you if you knew what it was. I don't recognize the model.
Oh, that's the okay. So that's the electric car commercial. So so Star Wars fans will recognize Joe Johnson. Joe Johnson was the art director, ILM art director, designed so many famous spaceships and iconic things from the original trilogy, and then moved on to be a director. And this was 95, I think, or so. 96, maybe early 96. Anyway,
yeah, that's at least 96 because I think that's when he came over for the AT&T.
Okay,
yeah.
So it was the first time. It was like later in the year in 96. It was probably like September, October 96. It was the first time. It was the I can't remember the electric car, but it was the first electric car that was being mass marketed.
Like the EV1 or something.
EV1, GM, yeah, the GM car, yeah, and the idea is that the commercial was that all the electric appliances in the house come and greet the car on the street, and while they were going to use a lot of digital imagery of getting the toasters and vacuum cleaners and mixers and everything, we made a whole bunch of little this is a radio control vacuum that Grant did. I think there was a radio control mixer. There's a whole bunch of stuff. We put stuff on cars and pulled it with strings and all sorts of stuff. Anyway, we went down to Pasadena, and that's where we shot it. But yeah, that's what that was from. And that's our famous kiss sign, of course.
Yeah, there's so many other projects that he worked on. It's great to see all of these. Nelson, thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Yeah, what was great about it, Grant was always willing to jump in and help, and because he had a real thirst for knowledge. He always wanted to learn. I remember some of the, like I said, I was talking earlier about the amazing painters we had. That's the R2 we made for episode 1. He wanted to learn so much more, so he asked some of the painters to give him like lessons in painting so that he would have that skill as well.
I bought an air compressor from him that he had purchased for learning how to do airbrushing, and for some reason, something about it, it wasn't right for him, or he was moving on to something else, and so he sold it to me for like half of what he bought it for. And it was a very nice compressor.
Yeah, he was, like I said, he was always trying to learn different things. Obviously, electronics, he could do that in his sleep. But this was the R2 restoration. That's from when we were getting the R2s ready for episode 2. Mm-hmm. Scott McNamara and myself and Grant there. So Grant changed the electronics in R2 so that the R2 used to hold it right there, because I know Nelson will probably want to tell some of the stories of Sydney there. But just real quickly, Grant changed the electronics in R2 to completely digital solid state electronics with LEDs and everything, as opposed to the 1970s technology that existed. But go ahead and I'll tell about these.
Yeah. So when after Phantom Menace came out, then it was announced that and that was shot chiefly, I guess, at Leavesden in London. They announced that they were going to film the next 2 prequels in Sydney at Fox Studios Australia. And so they had this huge gala celebration and announcement. I think like Hugh Jackman and Shirley MacLaine were the hosts, and it was broadcast to 30 something countries or whatever, but it was a huge deal. And we went over to do a character appearance. So Grant was going to be C-3PO and I was going to operate R2-D2, and Jillian there in the middle was the character coordinator. And so, we tried to make a little time for some fun too. So this is on top of the Sydney Harbor Bridge, which we scaled. And you're going to see some slides coming up that we took a side trip over to New Zealand and to Queenstown, which is kind of an adventure capital. And while we were in Queenstown, we bungee jumped, and this is the shot over jet riverboats. That's again back in Sydney, but this was a jet boat that went up a narrow river chasm, and just inches from the bank and the rocks and everything. And that's Grant and Jillian in the back there.
It's the bridge you just were on top of.
Yeah, and then this is at the gala. This is when we were backstage, right there. Yeah, that was probably at the end of the stage in our green tent. And then this is at the zoo in Sydney, back in New Zealand again. And on the boats, I was sitting in front of them, so I just turned around, and that was that exuberance, that childlike joy that Grant had was just always evident whenever he was on an adventure. And I like that picture because it kind of captures him at that moment.
And you guys bungee jumped in New Zealand as well.
We bungee jumped as well, yeah. Grant was the one who instigated that yet again. He had also taken helicopter lessons on our trip in Hawaii. So he had a thing about flight and being airborne, and he decided we should bungee jump. This is a Lost World set, by the way. The ferry crashing into the dock scene. But Grant wanted to bungee jump, and it was in the rain over this river. And so, okay, well, we'll go watch. And so he did it. And then Jillian decides, okay, I'll try it. So she did it. And I wasn't going to be the odd person out. And even though I had a deathly fear of falling. And so I did it. And it was quite exhilarating. But Grant was the one who kind of pushing himself to the edge and dragging me along with him. So it was quite
as I say, in the late 90s, ILM got the contract to build 3 bunnies for Energizer, and that's what this is. So Grant gave the bunny his beat. He had a little circuit in there that not only operated everything, but it would actually make the boom, boom, boom noise, so that we could, they look good on set. And for those that ask, the bunny was actually run by Energizer batteries. I can't remember what the number was. I made a battery pack that fit a whole bunch of AA batteries. I think it was something like 42, 52 AA batteries that sat in the drum there, and that was a requirement that it had to be run by Energizer batteries.
Truth in advertising.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, do you guys have any other final thoughts or stories or anything you want to share with the fans here?
Real quick. So this is from episode 2, and as I told you, Melissa, I'm 100% sure that's Grant in the costume, and the next one I'm about 80% sure that's Grant. So the C-3PO was supposed to be originally seen as the puppet C-3PO that we saw in episode 1, and we filmed that with Anthony Daniels on location in Tunisia, and then we came back and they needed a couple more green screen shots of the puppet walking into the courtyard and doing some other things that we hadn't gotten, more long shots than anything that we hadn't gotten. And Michael Lynch was the guy that supervised the C-3PO puppet build on episode 1. And he puppeteered it for episode 1 as well. And so we put him in the rig, and we were literally about to shoot against green screen with Michael as the C-3PO puppet. And John Knoll comes walking in and says, "You know what? Stop. George just cut the whole subplot of C-3PO getting his coverings in the film, and we were going to see C-3PO completely dressed the first time you see him. And so then it was like, okay, pull Michael out of the rig and get Grant over here because Grant plays C-3PO. So we put Grant in the costume because we shot this scene was shot in in Tunisia on location with Anthony Daniels standing there as C-3PO with the puppet. So they had to remove him from there and then composite it in C-3PO. And Tony did shoot some of the scenes, but he didn't shoot all of them. I'm pretty sure, almost 100% sure. And I know that first one is Grant because I could tell the way he moves. But I think we shot this one too. There's another one of him going down into the homestead. So Grant's actually in episode 2.
That's just great. The way I've logged a lot of time watching Grant walk around and perform in that costume, and just the way that one, your hunch, I would second it. I think just the way he's standing there, it just looks like Grant to me.
It's also the way the costume fits him.
Yeah, with the legs being a little shorter.
Legs shorter, the neck to the head ratio, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So he also was Grant also performed motion capture for episode 2 as well as C-3PO for the digital C-3PO that's in the droid assembly thing on Genosis. What is it? Genosis? Whatever where the termite guys are. But yeah.
That's great. Now I'm going to have to go back and watch the prequels again and see if I can find Grant Imahara. That's wonderful. Right. Well, Don, do you want to tell us about the foundation a little bit more again for people who may have come on late?
Yeah, so we're officially a thing. It's called the Grant Imahara STEAM Foundation. It's again a board member that is overseeing all of our operation is Carolyn, which is Grant's mom, and so we're working out on different. What our mission statement is going to be, but it's certainly going to be robotics and engineering and art involved moving forward. There's been a number of people that have already we've seen and approached individually saying how they could help and everything like that. And all I can say is we're going to definitely be reaching out. You'll know all about it as soon as we get our act together. I mean, we really just started 3-4 weeks ago. This was something that immediately after he passed away, a group of us started talking about, and we're just trying to get it off the ground, and so watch the Grant's official Facebook page. That will be where you'll be able to see more information about it. That will slowly be migrated over to that, and we'll We have secured the website and all that sort of stuff, but we obviously don't have anything up yet. So.
That's wonderful. I'm really glad to hear that. So,
yeah, we really wanted it. I think the general feeling with everybody, and of course, Grant's mother in particular wants all this to be done in Grant's name and continue his legacy. So, yeah, no, that's wonderful. Any last thoughts or stories? I really appreciate all of your time and openness for the fans to get to hear all of these things. I think it's wonderful. Yeah, no, I just, like I said, I've just been sitting back and watching the fan reaction to it, and it's just been overwhelming what he meant to everybody. And, it's sad. It's certainly sad. I mean, he was like a little brother to me. But, like I said, with the foundation and what Nelson was saying earlier about living your life like Grant, we just got to keep his memory going. So. Yeah, well, and it sounds like this could be an annual tribute panel at Silicon or something like that. All the different fandoms that have embraced Grant over the years. It sounds like we have to add Doctor Who and the Spice Girls and BSG fandoms, get them on board. I feel like we could do a panel about all of this. I know he was part of a Star Trek series and the BattleBots, of course. So
maybe that's
we didn't
something
even touch on the whole BattleBots aspect of it. I mean, Nelson was...
real quickly, I was actually Adam had alluded to being part of his pit crew, and I had a short stint there too. And like Adam, I was not really pit crew material for something like that, but it was quite a kick, quite a fun. It was me and Preston Donovan were another good friend of Grant's and co-worker. So
yeah, Grant and I went together to the original is Robot Wars, the very first one. Yeah. We went together, and I just were you there for that? No, did you come with us to Robot Wars?
I feel like I was in the audience, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so was Grant. It was before he competed.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was the very first one. Yeah,
right.
And I remember just like he was just so enthralled with that idea, and we had all these cool, funny ideas. I was saying, "Oh, let's make rockets and stuff like that." Yeah. I never took part in BattleBots. I never had anything to do with his robot or anything like that. But I remember his enthusiasm for that, and how fascinated he was, and how he was trying to determine what would be the best robot to have for this kind of
problem solving brain kicked in.
Yeah, he was great at reverse engineering things and looking at the problem and how would you just an engineer. I mean, that's what he was.
Right.
So.
And of course, the ironic and a little ironic twist there is Robot Wars was the brainchild of Mark Thorpe, who was model maker at ILM, and Mark Thorpe was instrumental in getting me my first job at ILM, and then years later I would help Grant get his first job at ILM, as Don too. But it's kind of full circle again.
Yeah. Yeah, Robot Wars was a big part of his life as well, or BattleBots. I'm sorry, it was a big part. Right. I remember we were all so excited because he got the action figures, or not action figures, but little. I've got it somewhere. I've still got the
his little Dead Blow.
Yes, Dead Blow action figure. So I needed a little Grant Imahara action figure to go with it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I almost made a I almost made a President Iwahara action figure, which is a whole other story. But yeah,
we got time.
Well, there were some pictures in there you might have seen where we were doing the Oprah show. It was for the launch of the special editions, and so we had a big character appearance on Oprah, and Grant was going to be C-3PO in this, and he had some kind of deadline that he was dealing with back at ILM, and so we had all flown in like earlier in the day, and we were kind of getting set up, and Grant was going to be taking like a red eye or a very late flight in to Chicago, and when he got there, first of all, they lost his luggage. When he got off the plane, the greeter with the sign, it said, welcome, it said Iwahara instead of Imahara. And then he gets to the hotel, and Jillian and I meet him in the lobby while he's checking in. And they're explaining to him at the desk that they don't have a reservation for him. They don't have a room. And he is hating life at that moment. He's tired. Everything's gone wrong on this trip. He's looking at Jillian and I, and we're trying to keep it together because Grant with the eyebrows and the raising that eyebrow and looking at us under his eye, and but then the guy said, "But Mr. Imahara, we are going to put you in the presidential suite." So they put him on the top floor of the Omni, whatever it was, and in the presidential suite. And there were some pictures in that slideshow though, where he was in his robe, kind of lying down on the ground, and we were all gathered around. There was a piano in this suite. It had a commanding view up there. It was pretty funny. So,
a lot of people don't know. Actually, Grant could play the piano really well too.
That's right. Yeah.
And matter of fact, he inspired my wife, who always said when we would all hang out together, she said, "Oh, I always wanted to learn to play the piano." She said, "Oh, you can do it. You can do it." And so he bought her a beginner piano player book, on how to play the piano, which she still has. Mm-hmm. And she started learning to play the piano. So now she plays the piano too. So because of that.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Okay, well, I think we're gonna wrap up then, unless I don't want to cut you guys off at all. I'm not going anywhere, but
I think we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, I really appreciate your time. Just a quick reminder for the viewers, Forcefest is raising money for Make-A-Wish, so you can donate via the link that's in the chat or in the comments or here on Get Vocal with that blue diamond, and they will match 33%. So I want to thank our panelists so much for being here and sharing their stories and their photos and their time with us. I will have the video, and I plan to share that with all the panelists, so hopefully that will be up on various social media pages and stuff like that in the next week or so. I'm also going to put it on my science communication website, which is howmanyscientists.com. I think it's clear that Grant was loved by so many people, so many fandoms, and it sounds like we should all go out and live like Grant lived, and the world would be a better place.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, Nelson.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.